being a little girl and not being able to travel up where they were digging out these mastodons, we got to stay home and hear about it. And my mother and father kept these little bit of trinkets that I have. And I brought them all down to my house when we closed out their house. And my parents lived right up there against the hills. But to make this story right, we live in the bottom of a big lake. San Pedro Valley was a lake at one time. And if you want to look and watch, you could see the markings on the hills. There'll be the big cliffs or just a small mark. And right up here where we live, the markings on the hills to the south and the east of us are deep. You could tell that water was rocked up, blown up against the hills. Now, to make a real good mark, our hills are of sand and clay, so that as the wind blew from the south and the water splashed against the hills, it made a mark like it was a cliff. And that way you could tell it was a lake. And wouldn't it be nice if it was a lake now?
Yeah.
we wouldn't be living in the bottom of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you look a little farther toward the east and north, you'll find that along those hills there's white marks. That is limestone, and it shows that at one time there's water flowing out of those hills, filling the lake. That's how it got its water. Mm-hmm. And all in Arizona and different places, you'll find places where there was lakes. Also in Mexico, in the states up close to the Arizona border, you'll find that that's also where there was a series of lakes. And around these lakes, they found mastodons. And this was one of the biggest digs this side of the Mississippi River when it was done. And it was, it didn't draw the attention because Arizona had just been a state for about 9 years when they were discovered. And it was discovered by surveyors that was going through the country marking the height of the hills. So when they saw these strange bones sticking up out of the ground, they didn't look like real rocks. And one of the surveyors had seen these before when he's working in Colorado. Mm-hmm. They sent word to Washington, D.C. that there's really a fossil find, and they sent out a scientist. Dr. Gidley came, and he says, yes, that's a deposit of dinosaurs. And dinosaurs, or these big ones like this, are the oldest kind of dinosaur, and these are called mastodons. These mastodons, look at their feet. They could really plow through mud. Yeah. And I imagine if they took one step, it mounted quite a bit of country to cover. Mm-hmm. And these three were all in one mud hole. They'd come down to the lake to get water, and they just plain sunk in the mud. And they just got to tromping each other until they stayed there. Yeah, and wow. They're petrified. They're like rock. Right. And see this stuff? Mm-hmm. That's all dried mud on them.
Oh, okay. Wow, so it's really calcified.
That's the end of a baby tusks, that one is. Anyway, this three, this big one put together was 14 feet high. Now if you want to kind of get an idea, your ceiling is 8 foot. So how many more feet you going to have to go?
Yeah.
6 more. And that's hard to stand by him and look. And he was mounted and placed in New York City at the Natural History Museum. He stayed there until over 50 years. And when they were refinishing the museum, he was taken down, and we don't know where he is. In fact, I've had children go there and ask to see it, and they don't even know anything about it. They don't find it. Anyway, he was at the top, and he was tramping these other two down.
Oh.
This smaller one is mounted and is in Washington, D.C. He didn't have his eyes open. Anyway, he's mounted. Now the mastodon is the most common dinosaur. There were just lines of them there. I went to see him in Washington. I had the opportunity of going. And the tusks were so heavy, the ones they have mounted, they have plastic tusks on them because they're just hard to hold them up there in the air. And they were working away at those. Let's see it. We just will have it where you can see it. My father helped dig them up. And this is, you can see what these are.
Oh, they're
the mastodons in there. And this is the bones. As he dug them up, they had to be packaged and numbered so those putting them together know what to do. And these are the bones that's been stored in my grandpa and grandma's barn before shipping them out.
Wow.
And then these different ones. And you could see that how long the tusks were. They were huge.
Very large.
And this, is, there's my father digging away. He looks pretty brown, but he isn't. He just has been in the sun until it was burned.
Oh, was that Milton?
What?
Was that Milton Curtis?
Milton. And then Dr. Gidley wanted to take his car up there. Now, I don't think Dr. Gidley drove that from Washington, D.C. I think he must have shipped it, because I don't think that car down there could have made the trip.
Right.
Anyway, he wanted to take it up to where they were digging, and my father's helping him by pulling him with a horse. And then this is Dr. Gidley in the white shirt, and there's a man that worked on the ranch that was helping, and my father, and it might be the other way around. Anyway, that's the bunch that was digging. And somehow they would dig in the months of January, February, and March. And then they'd cover it up, and it would be hot. And Dr. Gidley would have to go back to Washington, D.C. But it took him about 3 years to work and take it in and out. And as they were digging, they thought they had everything, and it was just the mastodons they had. And Dr. Gidley was looking around, and he found a place. Where did I have it? Anyway, under a mesquite bush, it was scratching away, and he found a little bit of a shell sticking out. He was so excited. Daddy said he jumped up and down and threw his hat in the air, and he said just like he had a pair of new red cowboy boots. Now, do we have this? What I'm wanting,
They're behind you.
I want that shell. That, oh, it's in this and in this. No. Where's my yellow book? Yellow book, yellow book. It said, it's good to dawn. Where's my picture?
That one it?
See, I'm practicing on you kids and on, oh, there we go. There we go.
This red one?
Yes.
I took it too far away.
Anyway, they found this. Now that's my father said that shell was a pearly pink. He said it was the prettiest thing.
Wow.
And look how perfect it is.
Yeah.
And there, you can see that little square on his back.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they had to replace a piece. And a bush grew right up in the middle of that.
Oh, because it had...
And see, everything's all right, and but the top of his head had to be replaced. Now, it seems things go in threes. There's 3 of these shells, but they could make one perfect specimen.
So they combined the different ones together? Wow.
Uh-huh.
Very nice.
And that's, they say it beat its prey with its tail.
Like a triceratops.
And that, and when I saw it in Washington, I said, oh, good, I'm so glad to see that. That's what he beat his food with. And they said, no, he lived on grass. So they changed their mind from time to time, really, what things are, because the scientists taught us that that's what he did. But there's very few of these that have been found. There's one other at the time found in South America, and it was shipped to Europe. But that's why they were so happy to find that. Did you have a message? Okay. And, but you can look a little closer to these so you can see them.
It's called a glyptodon?
Yeah.
A glyptodon? So it's like a giant turtle or an armadillo.
And I got to see that, and Mark and Emmeline had made a trip to back there, and they got to see it. I've got a picture of them looking at it simply.
Is it still on display in Washington?
Yes. It, what is it, Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And when I was talking about these at the tourist court, there's a lady raised her hand and said, I saw that big one back in New York, so we have evidence of that. But you can see how they were, the bones were dug up, and then Daddy brought them down in a wagon. That was his pickup. In 1922 to 24, that's the main transportation for heavy things is a wagon. But in February and March of 1924, he took loads of bones to Benson. You know, he'd take a carload a day, and then they would ship them to Washington, D.C. And when the last batch went out, my father said, I guess that's the end of my mastodons. And a year later, they sent pictures. of all the things, and he was so happy to see those things. But they did let him keep a few tokens, and you'll see this is the end of a masculine test. If you kids would like to see it, you sure can. And this is the desire. This is a tooth, mastodon tooth. Now look, I want you to look inside here. You could see the nerve, and you could also see a vein hole, where a little vein hole was through. You'd have 4 of those, Lincoln.
Similar to a molar?
It's like a wisdom tooth.
Yeah.
You gotta turn it the other way. You're still chewing wrong. There you're coming.
Yeah, but what were they made of?
Ivory.
Bone?
Yeah.
Just like bone?
Yeah. Do you want to see this?
Yes, that's great.
Touch.
Now you might like to know what the earlier people looked like that went to school here. This school was before 2000. No, 1900. This is 18. And this is when I went to school in the 20s. And this schoolhouse, when this school was worn out and the settlers had been driven out, they couldn't live here anymore. Well, they built this schoolhouse. And then this is where Chester went to school when he was a little boy in Chupi up in the mountains. And they'd just get anybody that could teach them to be their teacher. And you know, the doctors here, the Kochners, it's their mother that was teaching Chester in school.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that one. And then maybe you'd like to wonder what they did to make their living. My grandpa had 2 mule teams, and a mule team would consist of about 10 mules. To 5, you know, in 2 pairs, it'd be 5 hooked together. And then they had a blacksmith shop in Naco where they repaired the wagons and kept them moving. This is my father's pickup, his wagon, and here's some more mule teams. We had, Grandpa's brother had 3 teams, but they were horses and they were brown. And there was always this conversation, which is the best, mules or horses, you know. Keep a little entertainment going.
So what was the consensus, mules or horses?
But
Which was better, the mules or the horses?
I guess it's still your own opinion. And then this is our life in Palmyrene. Some of it, there's pictures of lions that was out in the field here.
Oh wow, those are pretty.
That comes around, and this is our family on horses.
Now are these your kids?
Yes, those are
Alright.
Spencer, James, and Kurt. And
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah.
And then this is another one of our activity of horses.
Is that Mariel in that picture?
What?
Is that the little girl? Is that Mariel?
Yes, she got to be on that by herself.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's our pictures that you might like to see. And then I'll introduce you to my little this and that's. Do you know what these are?
Do they go over your boots?
They call them spats.
Spats. Okay.
And you had a little a tool like a screwdriver or something with a hook on it. Looky, wouldn't that be fun to hook those on every morning?
Uh-huh.
These are what his sisters would wear when they were in their pretty skirts that they had spats that they
Is it
wore.
like a crochet hook?
Yeah.
You pull it over. I've used one before on a wedding dress.
Oh,
So those tight little buttons.
you took them up. Uh-huh. And then these are some little Indian rocks. I imagine this would be where they want to make their arrow the same size. They could have a pattern. And then this was, you know,
The
some
pestle.
little Indian rock.
I wonder if that's a pestle and mortar.
But
The pestle and the mortar where you would crush your herbs, maybe.
yes, that's funny. This is a better one. Oops. Can you get it? Look at that one.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at this one.
Mhm.
Isn't that pretty work?
Yeah.
Can you imagine sitting there and
And
Get-
they carved
dig
it
in
out.
it.
Wow.
Put it up.
Okay, can I see?
Show the inside. Didn't you have a story about the mules
Can make-
jumping over?
yeah, these little mule shoes. When they, you know, the settlers first came, they had to make most of the things. And these are handmade mule shoes. And you know, in the mines, these poor little mules are taken down in mine and probably never come back up other than after he died or something. But these are some shoes that they put on. Here's a couple of horseshoes. And I don't know whether you've seen oxen's shoes or not, but there's two of them. This would have to be, yes, it'd have to go that way, wouldn't they? Because the
Together?
holes would have to be on the outside.
Yep.
Anyway, those are oxen shoes. You can hand me those watches.
Those are pretty.
My father liked a little leather strap. That's a lot better than metal string or anything else. And he wound his little leather strap on his watch. And you know, we could buy a watch like that for $1. If you went down to a drugstore or something, you got it for $1. And this is a tag that he put on his suitcase. See, when you want to go someplace, you generally got on the train and take you. And he used to go to school over at Eastern Arizona when it was a high school. He'd go once in a while, a semester or a quarter. And this is what he tagged his suitcase with, and it was written in Arizona Territory. So you can see how long that was.
Wow. Yeah.
And this is a railroad watch. All those that run the railroad had to have a watch, and it had to be the same time so that they could keep trains moving and keep from having accidents.
Wow. That makes
Then
sense.
if you're going out in the hills, or even to Randall's house, you might run into something like this. He
We
can't
got one of
even see
those.
it. Anyway, that is little trinkets that I like to keep. And let's see, oh, this, I'm sure you like it. What do you think it is?
It's an egg.
Ostrich.
Ostrich egg. And we've had it for quite a few years. It came from the ostrich farm when there's one in Tempe. We happened to be passing it one day, and my father said, let's go look in, see the birds a little closer. And we drove into Ben's yard. This was under a tree. And Daddy says, will you sell me that? Yes. So Daddy bought it from him.
Nice.
And then the Indian relics were easy to find. There was a lot around here. And I have a platter that I brought out, but you can see the Oyas over here in the cabinet. And that generally they were in burial things. Bones were buried in the Oyas, and then they would put some trinket or something in there that was personal to them. And that's how come, oh, let's see, that bracelet back up there, that's the choice one.
Yes.
Yeah. See, isn't that something?
Mm-hmm.
That's, that'd really be pretty, wouldn't it? You know, when my grandparents were first moved here, they had quite a few daughters and they had a piano, and each one took piano lessons. And this aunt was playing a piano, and some Indian men had come by for something to eat. And while she was playing, they stood outside and listened. And when she got to quit, what would he be called? Anyway, he came in the house and he gave her a pair of beads, took a pair of beads off and gave them to her for playing music for him to listen to.
Wow.
It was so nice for him.
Mm-hmm.
But see, the Indians weren't fighting then. They just were traveling here and there, and they had to stop by the ranch house to get something to eat. But that's some of the ornaments that came from there. And when we first moved to Pomerine to run on the dairy, one of Chester's brothers was bottling the milk and take it into Benson to sell. And you'd sell them the milk, and then when they were through, you'd go by and pick up the bottles. And this is one of them that says Brown's Dairy, Benson on it. That's one milk bottle. And they had a paper cap that was pushed down tight. So that's how, if you wanted to drink a milk at a cafe or something, you'd get it in a bottle like this.
Would you have to shake it up to keep the cream and the milk set together?
But it was always in a, ice box.
Okay.
And to keep it cold. Now let's see what other little trinket do I have. Oh, you saw my collection of tomahawks. You want to pass it around? You didn't. And then
Again, hold it up.
here, this is more your size.
Uh-huh.
Cool. Thanks.